And welcome to Office Hours in partnership with School Rubric. My name is Pawan. Thank you for joining us tonight. We had an incredible kickoff to 2021 with a fantastic episode last week on OneWord2021. Shout out to my partner in crime, Chey, for hosting such an amazing session last week. And so we loved getting all of that feedback, all of the fantastic feedback and the positive energy from the broadcast the live stream last week. And so we're very excited about hosting tonight. So we just want to check in before we get started with tonight's episode with everybody and how everyone is doing. So welcome, Charles. Welcome, Traci. Welcome, Chey. And let's check in a little bit. I know that last week our conversation was about OneWord 2021. So how is everyone doing? How is everyone sort of keeping up with their OneWords? We had some amazing videos talking about our OneWords in that amazing montage that was put together last week. So how are you actualizing your OneWord so far this year? Let's start with you, Charles. Tell us a little bit about your OneWord and just how are you actualizing it in the last week or since the new year began?
Yeah, so my OneWord was challenge, right? And so I don't know if you guys saw, but apparently I caused a commotion on Twitter. I just simply asked a question about what was going on. I had a situation in my school about, Black History Month and all of these other pieces that make up a person's identity. But that is exactly what we're talking about, right? Challenging us to step outside of our comfort zones, having those difficult conversations. And that was part of my challenge. And so I think definitely that happened within the last 24 hours. So I'm super excited that I am truly living up to my OneWord of challenging not just myself, but those that I'm interacting with in the social media spheres.
That's amazing. Thanks, Charles, for highlighting that, your OneWord of challenge. Traci, give us a little update. How are you doing? And tell us about your words and how that's going.
I am wonderful and glad to be here with all of you. My smash words are fearlessly collaborating, or fearlessly collabing, I'll call it. And yeah, that's been a lot of fun. Like this is that fearless collaboration, stepping outside of your comfort zone. So many people and I are talking about doing things together and it grows. I don't know. It just grows you, that just constant pursuit of learning more, getting to know other people, learning their best practices. That's that fearless collaboration. So I feel like I'm doing pretty good with it.
Good. That's fantastic.
Traci, if you don't mind, don't forget we have our collaboration coming up, right? I want people to know we have something in the works that is coming out, our joint partnership on our podcast. So just throwing that out there. Fearless.
A principal and a teacher conversations, right?
a little crossover action here. That's fantastic. We're very excited about that. That is cool.
I'm pretty excited. We got the turn right.
I was actually really impressed by that. Good job. Chey, I know that we have a joint word for 2021. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? I know I spoke a little bit more about this last week, but since you were hosting, you didn't really have an opportunity to talk about it as much. Tell us about our word and how that's starting to come into fruition in this new year.
One, I've completely lost focus because now that Charles told me that he's caused a Twitter incident, like I just so desperately want to go to my phone and take a look.
Just start checking.
So thanks for that. Now that Traci and Charles have announced that they have a crossover episode of the collaboration coming, I want to announce that Chey and Pav have a podcast together too, and we're going to collaborate and have some dialogue back and forth. But I'm super excited to hear the conversations with Traci and Charles because we love hearing from both of you. We've had great conversations with each of you. So we're really looking forward to that dynamic of the teacher and the principal. As for Amplify, it worked for about 3 days and I've moved on. I know.
We gave up.
But actually, y'all, did we need laughter tonight or what?
The key to Amplify is I think you guys, we all talked about this last time, is that the words are just it's a word and it can be a focus point, but it doesn't have to be a focus point. And sometimes it guides you and sometimes it doesn't guide you. And I think amplify has been good for us because it's reminded us, it's similar to Charles's conversation and Traci's conversation, that amplify is really about amplifying and honoring stories. And as much as we've been blessed to have our story heard the last year, we feel like we're in a position now where it's time for us to really amplify other people's stories, where a year ago we were trying to have our stories heard. And we've been so warmly accepted in the podcast and the Twitter space and the Facebook space that we now feel that obligation. Now that we've made that step, let's amplify other voices. And we've been really excited about amplifying other stories, other voices, especially in our community. Some student amplification and some amplification of other teachers in our community that are just interested and excited to amp it up.
That's right. Thank you so much, Chey, for highlighting Amplify. And speaking of amplifying, I want to amplify all of the viewers that are joining us tonight. I know that Amanda has checked in on YouTube, so thank you for that. Throw out your questions and your comments during the live stream. We're always so happy to interact with viewers during this. I know the 30 minutes goes by super duper fast, but we want to acknowledge all of our viewers during this live stream as we get through it. And so throw out some questions to us, throw out some comments. We want to interact with everyone as much as possible. So speaking of today's live stream, let's dive into today's episode. We're talking about balance. And while balance is so important in our personal and our professional lives, today we want to talk a little bit more specifically about how we find balance with educational technology, also known as EduTech, as we know it a little bit more so. So during this pandemic time, I know that we've been thrown, and Chey and I have talked about this on the podcast a lot, and I'm sure it comes up often that we've had so much technology that's kind of been thrown at us in the last couple of months because we are teaching virtually now, and so it's something that we have to talk about a little bit more. And there's so much out there for us to explore. So how do we find balance while we continue to plan engaging lessons for our students? So this is going to be a great conversation. We've got some fantastic questions that we are going to be answering. And so let's jump right into this discussion and listen to our first question that comes to us from our friend, Tara Desiderio, an elementary school principal from Pennsylvania. So here is Tara's question.
Hi, my name is Tara Desiderio, and I'm an elementary principal in Macungie, Pennsylvania. My question is, how do you find balance between using technology for student learning versus creative, traditional modalities of learning for content creation and application of learning?
All right, that's a great question from Tara, a fantastic one, actually. So let's get into this one. Chey, I'm going to throw to you first. How do we find that balance between using technology for learning versus creativity? And I know you're good at this, so don't look at me with that look. So
I sent you a side message to ask Traci.
That sounded like the teacher.
You know what? The balance is an interesting word, because we had a conversation really about, do we get overly fixated on balance, and is there a chance to maybe modify that and think of the word as flow? And that was a conversation we had recently, and it applies nicely to tech and trying to find that balance. And if you fixate on balance, sometimes you can get you over plan or maybe over structure, thinking if I'm having this balanced approach, I only want to use a Jamboard from 9 to 10 in the morning on Monday, but I don't want to use it again if I use it as an example. But let's say I have great flow and I have a Jamboard and the interaction is fantastic, and then my next activity, I feel I gauge the sense of the room, and then I jump into another Jamboard and I attach it to a Jamboard and I do the Zoom voiceover over talks. We're having some conversation. And so it always makes me feel I want to have good flow with my technology. And I understand my plan on Monday may be to say I want to use my tech Thursday morning, but by Thursday morning, who knows what's going on? So as much as balance makes sense, I don't want to denounce the word balance, but I know we've really talked about that of flow. And flow, I think, comes from trusting your instincts and knowing that you know your students. And when you know your students, maybe I spend the day on Jamboard and Google Slides, and then I know the next day I'm going to flip it, I'm going to change it up a little bit, and then I'm going to have good flow there. So I'm going to push on the word balance, because I don't want to feel like I have to do this and then I have to do that, because I've decided that I can only spend 30 minutes on a Jamboard. I want to have flow. I want to trust my instincts. I want to know my students the way I know the teacher beside me is going to know them as well. And maybe they don't feel as comfortable. Maybe they sense their kids don't appreciate the Jamboard as an ed tech tool and they want to use something else. So that's what I'm going. I'm going with flow. And I'm going to put the pressure right on Charles because he's been causing a lot of heat today. So let's bring this right to Charles. Charles, what's your sense of this this question?
You know, Chey, I love the idea that you said flow, right? Because you're right. As soon as we say balance, and I think we as educators, I won't even just say teachers, we as educators, as much as we love our autonomy and our space to be creative, when you say things like that, there's a part of us that says, wait a second, how do I achieve that, right? And so I love that idea that you're like, no, let's get rid of balance. So I'm not focused on, do I have enough of this and enough of this, but how do I move between those things and just kind of keep things moving, whatever needs to be done. And so, you know, I agree, right? I think that I've seen this shift and I've told my teachers this before COVID. I don't know how much paper. I really hope that whatever large entity is up there, because I'm trying to be respectful of everybody, right? That is not a tree, because if teachers go to the great beyond, right, and there's a tree there that he's like, hey, you've taken us all out, right, to now to where everything is online, and it's like, guys, let's find it. I'm going to start using flow in between. And so one of the things that we've done is we've actually partnered with an external organization called Project Exploration, and I know they're all over the country. And so they do these amazing STEM lessons with us. So we have STEM kits that we put into the hands of our students. So we actually say, outside of watching, right, the lesson come through the computer, it is hands-on now with old school. We are creating bottle rockets and all types of stuff, because it is exactly that, finding that balance. Not everything has to be on the computer digitally, right? We have to find that flow between the idea of saying, hey, we're going to incorporate technology, but we're also going to have a little bit of fun with old school methodologies, right? So I like the flow. I have a meeting coming up with teachers, and that is going to be the word I'm using. So thank you, Chey.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually, the flow. And then Charles, to sort of feed off of that a little bit and talking about, you know, even coming off of using technology and bringing it back to the hands-on stuff, which is something that I know that our students are really missing. And so I like that you brought that into the mix, because as we are talking about EdTech, we have to remember that there's so much learning that happens with our hands and touching and feeling and building and making. And this is a part of the educational experience. So how are we bringing that into the fold as well? So thank you for highlighting that. Traci, we haven't heard from you yet. Tell us a little bit about what you think about this balance or flow or moving back and forth between things.
Well, we vibe so wonderfully, because the word that comes to me is just that. What's your vibe in your classroom? So, you know, when you think about your vibe in your classroom, when you think about vibing, I mean, it kind of adds this spark and this energy. So then you're not focused on, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. If I don't do this, this is going to happen. So just what's your vibe? What's your vibe with your kids? And today, for instance, we were learning about habitats, and I decided, you know what? I don't want to just teach habitats from a screen. So I got a stack of paper. We're think about polar bears. I got a stack of paper. I got some paper towels, and then I got some tape. And I had the document camera, and I'm like, kids, what can we do with this? How can we make a polar bear habitat with what I have? And they had to think, and this is kids on a computer, and all they can do is see these materials. And so they started telling me, actually it was this kind of paper, use the paper to make a cave. And I'm like, okay, I got the paper. What do I do? They told me to tape it down. We tore the paper towels. That's stuff they have in their houses, but they're being creative. They had to think. And then I challenged them. Okay, you go do it when we get off this call. Be creative. Try to use some different materials. Don't use the same materials I have. So that it's okay. Innovation, creativity, old school tech, and fun. You get those things, there's your vibe right there. You're vibing, baby.
That's, you know what, you made such a great point. I think that as we spend a little bit more time virtual, and we get to know what our normal is like in our virtual classroom, and we start to establish the culture in the classroom, the relationships in the classroom, we start to figure out where we are comfortable, and we learn what our students need at certain points during the day. And so I love that idea of feeling the vibe of our students and going with the flow and moving back and forth to what our students need to be able to establish a great learning space. Before we move on to our next question, I just want to say hi to Tim and Kevin who have joined in with our live stream tonight. So thank you guys for dropping in tonight. And I want to remind our viewers that we are on every Tuesday at 8 p.m. for this 30-minute lightning round as we talk about some of these cool things that are happening in education. And today we are talking about educational technology and how we find the balance or the flow between how we are using that on our day-to-day basis. So let's jump into our next question, actually. And we have a question that is coming to us from Matthew Joseph, and he is Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment in Leicester Public Schools in Massachusetts. And he is the co-author of Modern Mentor, Reimagining Mentorship in Education. Here's Matthew with second question of the night.
And grab it.
Hello, my name is Dr. Matthew X. Joseph. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Assessment in Leicester, Massachusetts. And I have these questions for you. How do you build relationships and incorporate fun, personality, and experience in the virtual environment? Also, how do you give yourself permission to do this with all the other tasks in front of you as a teacher?
All right. So this is something that I am trying to perfect on a day-to-day basis, you know, with my students as well. How can we be learning, have an immersive experience, and also be having fun and have some personality in our classroom using the technology that we have? So let's dive into this one. This is a great one. I'm excited to hear what you all have to say. Traci, I'm going to start with you this time. What do you think? How are you building relationships and incorporating some fun and personality in your virtual experience with your students?
Well, anybody that knows me knows that's what my classroom is all about, that vibe. In person, I'm the one that's standing on the table or running outside the door and dashing back in, like the kids just never know where the next thing is going to come from. So how do you bring that same spice, that same energy to the virtual environment? Well, I've just really been creative. First, you have to give yourself permission to have fun. You know, so many times, especially in the synchronous versus asynchronous environment, we think, I've only got this much time with the kids, so I got to pack it all in. I got to pack it all in. But if we don't pause for a minute and just have a good time with the kids, we're not going to reach them anyway. So they have to know that we care about them, that we want them to have a good experience, that their time with us matters. So we play charades, we play tic-tac-toe, and think not just X and O tic-tac-toe, it can be sight words. Think about, you know, for high school kids, okay, go grab some stuff in your house, go grab 10 objects, and then they have to do an algebraic expression. They got to figure out how to do it and then put them in a breakout room and let them have those conversations. I mean, like, the sky is the limit when it comes to virtual learning. We just have to take ourselves out of the box and be creative. So if anybody is struggling with that, that's my passion. I love it. I am so thirsty and willing to help you. Last thing, really, really quick, talk about fun. Like, when you're trying to change something on the screen, or if something's not working, ask a random question. I did this today. What's your favorite cereal? The dialogue was insane. Do you like sausage or bacon? You know, just toss some stuff out and then come back with telling them what your favorite thing is. It was amazing. So yeah, if you're struggling, love to help you out.
You know, Traci, I do want to jump in with that for a second, because I've been finding that, you know, there are sometimes I had something in mind that I wanted to do, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know what, I need to do something else, but I need a few minutes. I need a few minutes to sort of pull up a video or look for something that I really wanted to use. And I'm always so scared that in that couple of minutes that I'm looking for something or setting something up, that I'm going to lose them. That all of a sudden they're all just going to disappear from their cameras. But you know what? It doesn't actually happen. The students are willing to give you that little bit of grace to get yourself kind of figured out. And so what I've become very comfortable with is I always have my YouTube open to like a musical playlist. And if I need a moment, I just throw up a music video. And you kind of hold their attention while you kind of get yourself figured out. And I feel like that's something that we're sort of learning over time, is that you don't you don't have to have every minute figured out. And I know that Chey mentions this all the time. He talks about not every minute is equal in the classroom, during your day. I took it. I'm sorry. But it's totally right. I mean, you can take those couple of minutes and you can give them something simple to do while you kind of get your thoughts together. So that's a great thought. Thank you so much for sharing that. Charles, tell me a little bit about what you think about this question.
Yeah, so I want to jump in with two things really quick. And I agree with everything you guys said. And so I want to echo something that I had said earlier. And this is actually going off of your episode 70 of the Staff Room Podcast. If you haven't listened, make sure you do. But it's this idea, leaders, I'm speaking to you right now, making sure that we're giving our teachers the space to do exactly this. We cannot expect them to go in and be business from bell to bell. Like, I know that's been the phrase, I know that's been the approach, but we have to give them the support and permissions to build these relationships. We have to recognize that. And we can say it all we want, and but if we are not actively creating those situations, then it means nothing at all. So to my administrators out there, please make sure that you're giving that support. And the second thing I want to say is that I know Traci gave some examples of the things that she does, and that is great because that is who she is. But I would recommend teachers out there, be authentic, right? Do not do something just because you're like, oh, that's going to be cool. Because I couldn't imagine tuning in one day and hearing like, Pav the Wonder. Like, I'd be like, wait, what's that? That is not her. Did I do you justice, Chey? Like, be authentic and be you. Like, if you put on a show, the kids are going to know it, and it is not going to get the results that you want. So those are my two. Administrators, be supportive, give teachers that space. Teachers, be authentic and be you.
Love that, Charles. Chey, you want to jump in there?
Well, I'm glad you went to Charles after you took my go-to line on all minutes not being equal.
I needed to give you a little bit of time to come up with something else.
It reminds me, as we haven't had a ton of experience remote teaching, we actually went back face-to-face. So as much as it was scary to go back in that face-to-face situation with the COVID environment, all the new safety protocols, we just recently went back to remote. And I was trying to find, as Traci says, what was my vibe? Because in the classroom, I'm highly animated. As much as I'm very stoic right now, in the classroom, it goes up about 20 levels. But when I go to the virtual space, I felt like, where do I find my niche? How does my personality come through? And I actually took the lead from my students, because we were in a Zoom and I was trying to get all the names, and I put everyone in a breakout room, and there was 2 Mr. Cheneys in there. And I said, oh, some sort of glitch. And then I heard Mr. Cheney, and I was like, what? Mr. Cheney, you didn't put me in a breakout room. And the kid had changed his name to be Mr. Cheney. So the Zoom had these Mr. Cheney. So I said, oh, good one, tip my cap. Threw him in a breakout room, went to the breakout room, and the breakout room was all Mr. Cheneys. And they said, who's the imposter? And I took my lead from them, that they know how to be very creative in those spaces. And you can be relaxed and you can tell a joke. And here I was, like you, Pav, trying to make sure I had everything perfect. And in that moment of setting up my Zoom breakouts, those kids just broke the ice and said, okay, now I can go back to feeling more comfortable in the virtual space the way I would be in my classroom space. So our kids will give us sort of that grace, or they'll give us that permission, because they'll sort of set the tone, and they know that they can have a little bit of fun, and then they'll gravitate towards the work. So I just shared that anecdote of the imposter Mr. Cheneys in the Google Zoom. And as soon as they come in the chat, they go, hey, Mr. Cheney, you got to let me change my name. I'm like, fine, change your name, let's go. And it's just sometimes those simple things just give you great flow for the morning. So I'll just add that little tidbit.
Yeah, that was so fun when you told me that story. Actually, you shared a picture with me, and I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Are you logged in several times? And he's like, the kids, they're changing their names. That's, they miss that. They miss that from our face-to-face relationship that we have with each other. This is the kind of thing that we would spend the first 5-10 minutes of every day just kind of hanging out and talking, and, how was your night, or what was this morning like? Like, tell me a story. And we would just chit chat about stuff. And so they miss that, and they want that back. And so I think that it's really great that we give that to them in our virtual classrooms. Just spend a few minutes telling some jokes and being goofy and silly with them. They really appreciate it. And I think from the mental health perspective, they really need that. It's a connection that they're not otherwise getting. So I think it's great that we give that to them a little bit. Chey, you want to jump in?
Both of us are like, ooh, burning.
Traci, you go, and then I'll go after you.
Okay. I was just going to say this one thing, just like Charles kind of did a shout out and connected with administrators. Let me say this too, because this is a dialogue we're having. I've kind of sparked this conversation at my campus. We have to realize that in the virtual environment, some kids are rolling right out of bed to the screen. When they come to school, they have time to get up, to eat breakfast, get in a vehicle or walk and come to school. And they've got that blood pumping. A lot of times we're seeing kids and they're not fully there yet. So we have to have, as administrators, that grace and patience to know that you don't come into a classroom and expect to do an observation. Or if you do, make sure you have that grace first thing in the morning. You can't tell a teacher you're not engaging the kids. And I'm hearing a lot of that on social media. They're saying, well, your kids aren't really engaged. Well, they literally just got up out of the bed and sat down at the computer. So we've got to do a better job at that. I had to say that. I'm sorry.
No, that was perfect. It actually leans into what I was going to fine tune my little joke and actually pretend that I do some real teaching and structure. Is that every morning I have a different warm up activity for just that reason. Even though the day starts, late for me at 9:20, I can't expect my kids at 9:22 to be ready to dive right into the meat. So it's I call it a heads up game, math heads up, playing with numbers, and then I'm doing a build a word game activity. Wednesday's always a museum search online, and then Thursday we'll do a picture analysis, but there's always a fun activity. And then there's a Google Arts and Culture Museum where the kids make puzzles. So we go into a big, large group and we're all making puzzles. And then as an expansion, then I opened up the Google Zoom during that time. So the kids are just having some fun, interacting, talking about making puzzles or doing a math puzzle. And those first 10 or 15 minutes, it may be technically, although I would always call it productive struggle. And I always tell my kids, your brain, the synergies are going, it's all turning red. And I don't mean because you're blushing. I just mean because the energy is just going. And use those activities to chit chat, have a little bit of fun, but get everyone warmed up. So it's not a come in and go. It's a come in and go with this activity, but it's going to lend ourselves in to the next task. So it's just piggybacking exactly on what you said and exactly what everyone said. So it's either back to Pav or it's over to Charles.
No, I think Charles, did you have anything to add? Otherwise, we can move on. I think we have a question from a viewer that we could pull up.
Yeah, we do, and and that's the part of me that I'm like, we gotta pay attention to time. I want to jump in, but I'll wait.
So here's a question from Ryan. What is one of the coolest things that your kids have done with tech during this virtual craziness? So, Chey and I haven't spent as much time. This is a great question. Thank you, Ryan. Chey and I haven't spent as much time as maybe some people that are watching tonight with virtual school. We have been face-to-face since September, but I know that we have really, we've embraced the virtual world in this last month. So does anyone want to share something that their kids, that their students have done, or your actual children have done during this time, during virtual learning? Yeah,
so I'll jump in. So my 8th graders, they ran this whole election online. And it was amazing. I mean, they created their own cabinets. They created flyers. They actually, because we're virtual, they were able to go into other classrooms and do their campaign speeches. They would meet with me all the time and like pick my brain and try to convince me. They would always end the meeting like, do I have your vote? And it was amazing, right? That the amount of energy that they put into this. And then we voted school-wide, so the entire school completed their Google forms, and oh my God, it was so close. We were like, I think it was like 2 or 3 votes difference. And so when I was telling them, I'm like, guys, this is how close it was. And one of the beautiful things was one of the girls who was running this last year, you would never hear her speak in public, but here she was now running for president of 8th grade. And so it was amazing just to see them transform and develop and to really capitalize using this space. And now we have an 8th grade president. And the beautiful thing, right, they actually took the other cabinet and said, you're still part of us, right? So we've got this 8th grade team, which I now have to call Mr. President. But it was an amazing just to see them go through this, to actually see what that was supposed to look like, unlike what happened. Never mind.
That's great, Charles. I mean, that's something that I don't think that we would have been able to undertake at this time. But the fact that I'm sure that your students took so much initiative here and they took charge and they were able to kind of take this project on their own and do such amazing work with the election. That's fantastic. That is really cool. Traci, did you have anything to add? Something that your kids have done? Something cool?
I do. I want to say hi to, I think, Out of the Box Ed. I hope I said that right. He's popped in a few comments. So glad to see that. So a couple of things. Few educators and I across states are doing an inquiry-based learning project, and it's going to be amazing. So my kindergarten class is going to come up with the challenge or issue, and we're going to, so when the kindergartners come up with that, we meet with the kindergarten class and the other classes live on Zoom or Teams or whatever we use. My kids will present the challenge. We'll pass it off to the next group. They'll do the research. We'll pass it off to the next group. They'll do the concept development. And we're doing introductions on Flipgrid. So we are crazy excited about that. Barbara Bray has jumped in. She's helping and supporting. And then another thing is taking the opportunity. I have some kiddos that are exceptionally bright in their thinking. So individualized learning paths, creating these Google research decks, finding out what they're interested in. I had a kindergartner do a live news report and on Flipgrid, and it was amazing. Like she can rival any local news reporter. So just, you know, taking advantage of those opportunities, really setting them free, letting their innovation come out and just bud and soar. And the last thing is, if you are a kindergarten or lower grade teacher, you can do breakout rooms. I was terrified, but I was like, girl, you better get over your fear. You can rock it. My kids love it. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, breakout rooms are a lifesaver. I have really enjoyed, and the students, they want to, because something about just seeing only a few names on the screen and not the entire class.
Intimate conversation. Yeah, they get you talk like freely.
Exactly, freely. And you do see them come out of their shell and they do start talking. So that's really nice to see. Chey, tell me one thing that your students have been doing that's something that's cool and innovative with the technology since we've jumped into virtual teaching.
First, I need to know who's living beside a motorcycle track, because I hear a lot of cars flying by. So I'm gonna figure this out after the show. The most exciting thing I've been doing is a piece of paper and a pencil and 5 questions. Actually, the thing we've seen as we've moved to remote quickly is, for me, is the layers of being able to take, say, working in their digital portfolio where they're working with Google Slides, and then doing a lesson with photography, and then doing a lesson where we're doing Screencastify. And then you ask them to present something like we've been doing some social justice posters, and they're taking a Google Slide, and then they're embedding a Screencastify to have a voiceover, and then they're adding their own picture in from their photography. And I really like how they're taking the compartmentalized lessons or activities, and they're being creative enough to say, well, just because I learned this photography skill and art doesn't mean I can't use it over here in my social media for social justice poster, my media literacy. Oh, and I can embed that into my Google Slides, and then I can do a voiceover on my Google Slides with my Screencastify. So I've been really pleased to see that a lot of the skills we were doing, even in the face-to-face, they're able to layer them to make something better than it would have been originally the original idea was. And that's ultimately the power of creation, is I can teach you how to create something here, I can teach you how to create something here, and then you know how to layer them together to make something even greater. And I think that's been really good for me to see, is just the adapting of different skill sets and putting it together to create something really vibrant.
Yeah, you know, Chey, I have to agree with you. This is something that I've seen as well. It makes me really glad that we spent that extra time when we were face-to-face teaching students how to use all of these various platforms. And that's what they're showing us how to do now, you know. So if we ask them to present on something, I have students asking me, oh, you know, Ms. Wander, we learned how to code some games in French. Can we program a game to present what we want to do for this? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that. And, you know, we haven't really done too much of the coding using Scratch or whatever in our other spaces, but in French, they've been doing a lot of that. And so they are definitely going to be continuing to do that. And it makes us very happy to see. So I want to thank Amanda as well, who just left us a wonderful comment. And she has really enjoyed watching this as a homeschool mom. And so, this is something really interesting that we didn't really touch on so much. There are so many families that have decided to homeschool during this time. And so navigating the tech world has been challenging. I know that us as teachers, we've sort of had some opportunity to indulge ourselves in some of these EdTech programs and software and things that are available to us. But when you are homeschooling, then perhaps it's something more of a challenge to spend that extra time in figuring out what's going to be useful at home. So thank you, Amanda, for tuning in. And we're so happy that you were able to join us again tonight. So
you know what, Pav? I'm going to jump in real quick and say, like Amanda, some stay-at-home families, they've been rocking it for a while, like Amanda. So we have an opportunity to actually learn from those who have been doing it long before we have. They're like,
true.
Y'all are newbies at this. Let me show you a thing or two.
That's very true. You are very right, Tracy. We do have, I know I can speak for myself. I have a lot to learn when it comes to EdTech, and I'm doing my best, and it's a challenge, but it's paying itself in dividends. So I'm really glad for that. So thank you, Amanda, for joining us tonight. We are out of time for tonight. I can't believe once again that 30 minutes have just flown by, and the conversation has been so rich, and we've had a great time talking today. So I want to thank all of you, Chey, Tracy, Charles, for joining tonight for another fantastic conversation. I want to thank Tara and Matthew for their thoughtful questions to us tonight. Make sure that you follow and subscribe. Stay up to date with all of our episodes when you come live each and every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to Office Hours presented by School Rubric. We will be back next week for some more questions, answers, and amazing discussion and conversation. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and we will see you again very soon.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for watching Office Hours presented by School Rubric. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we highlight voices and perspectives of educational leaders across the globe. To stay in the know with our latest upcoming panels, interviews, tutorials, and more, make sure that you follow us on social media or visit us at schoolrubric.com. Thank you.